Hi, I'm Arielle Fischer, formerly Spotify and INgrooves.
Thank you so much for taking the time and coming on the podcast. I know you're overseas. I'm in New York. You're in Germany, so I know it's a little late on your end. So again, thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very grateful to participate in this podcast series for sure.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. Thank you. So, we had our brief little intro call kind of before this episode today, and I gave you my full background. But like I said there, I kind of wanted to save your story for the podcast. I think that's great. So you and I know each other a little bit via LinkedIn. We recently connected there, and yeah, I just thought it was great. With what I know about your career and what you've done so far, and what I think is really cool. And another reason I wanted to have you on is just that you're overseas, and a lot of people in the U.S. don't necessarily think about getting their music over there or how European markets work. And so yeah, that's one of the reasons I wanted to chat with you. So I'll shut up now, but would love to hear more about yourself and how you got your start in music and kind of where you're at today.
Thank you. Hi everybody. I'm Arielle. I am French Peruvian, and I've lived in many different places in the world, such as Paris, Lima, Singapore as well when I was a kid. And then in my 20s, I really pushed my career in London. And then now I've been based in Berlin for the last 7 years as well. In terms of my music experience, I started off when I was still at uni, helping out, artists and labels put together their MySpace profiles. Back in the day, that was a thing. Facebook was starting, so I also started posting some of their social media profiles, doing a little bit of press releases here and there, and this was all for free. I was just so deeply invested and passionate about music. And because of this era of social media, you could finally get in touch with artists that you liked. There was kind of that gate wide open. That actually gave me an initial CV in music. And when I moved to London, I finally started my first job in music, which was at INgrooves, and worked my way up to senior label manager. So over there, I was looking after our international dance and electronic artists and labels, and essentially doing all the distribution. So we would take the music and then propel it into the digital world of iTunes back in the day, and now Apple Music, obviously, Amazon, Spotify, even other radio channels such as SiriusXM in the US. It was really a really great operation to learn how the industry operates from a monetary point of view, and all of the channels that are available through technology, of course. And alongside that, really helping labels maximize their knowledge on how to monetize music online, also helping out with retail marketing, so pitching their music to platforms like Beatport, for instance, which is the key electronic music platform for downloads, and doing a lot of business development as well on behalf of the company. So yeah, it was a very fun experience for 8 years. And then 3 years ago, I started a gig at Spotify as artist and label partnerships manager for Poland, Turkey, and Israel initially. And then that evolved into all of Eastern Europe, which also included Czech Republic, Romania, and Hungary. In this capacity, I was looking after industry relations in those markets, also curating marketing campaigns with artists and labels from those markets, and doing a lot of educational work on the ground as well. Well, throughout the pandemic, it was more online, but
yeah. It's been a crazy year. Well, really appreciate that backstory. I mean, you've quite literally been all over the world, both personally and professionally. And so, again, that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on. I just felt like now, because as you alluded to, technology has really kind of leveled the playing field, and you could be from one part of the world and your music could be hitting somewhere completely different, and you don't necessarily know that or how to really how to best utilize that information. And so yeah, I think what you do is just amazing. Like, you have like just different. For me, one of the things I find most interesting is just the basic stuff is like the language barrier from each country is definitely different. Some of them, you know, kind of have singular languages. English, I'm sure, is kind of spread throughout that a good amount. But I just think that is, especially with music, like that's a crucial thing. It's like, how do you have your song in a different language pop in certain spots? And so, yeah, I'm sure you kind of had to deal with that on like a day-to-day basis, how to like share an artist's message in a new area. So I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. I'll come back to that line of questioning in a second, but just wanted to, again, say thanks. And I think that's an amazing story. One of the things I did want to ask you too is that, you know, you've been, you know, in the industry for over a decade now, gone through a whole bunch of different changes. Again, as you mentioned, starting out in the MySpace days, just like myself, then going into iTunes and the whole blog era being very big. You've worked at really great companies, INgrooves and Spotify. So curious to know which one of your projects, you know, that you've worked on in the past was your favorite, and why was it your favorite?
Mm-hmm. You know, it's a really difficult question to answer because there were so many great projects.
I was gonna say I asked this a couple ways now because this is almost like asking like which is your favorite kid, and it's hard to like say, oh, this one in particular. But so let me all right, so let's rephrase it a little bit then. The other way I ask it is, what is one project that you wish you could do over again so that you know, you could do it better? You're like, oh, it was great, but we kind of missed one or two things that we learned after, and we wish we knew that before. So what's one project that was kind of successful, but you thought could have been better had you added a couple of things?
Oh, caught me off guard there because I wasn't prepared.
Either way you want to answer, we could do your favorite one too, like that. That's cool. Whatever you have.
You know, great projects. I think, you know, on the ongoing basis of something that could always be improved and, you know, evolved through the experience that we have working on these projects. I would say, looking at my roster as a whole, when I was working at INgrooves, you know, especially when it comes to the dance electronic music labels, who were very much still affiliated with their vinyl sales, and how much that was such an important structure of that particular industry. When platforms like Spotify came along, which was just about this time that I started my career, you know, there was a big fear of this kind of, you know, streaming green devil that was suddenly removing sales from, you know, records. And inevitably, it just became such a transient solution to what was a dying industry, regardless of which genre you were participating in. So it was a fair amount of educational work, but I would say that artist by artist and label by label, as we started working with, you know, actual analytics, which I think is one of the beauties of, you know, the evolution of technology in music, that now you can have distributors that, you know, can give you access to backends where you can see your daily streams, your monthly streams, or your downloads, which is so important to, you know, have more transparency on how your catalog is being moved across consumers. And being able to work with our team to, you know, give that transparency to partners was really, really important. On top of that, being able to help them with more technology deliveries. So, you know, expanding kind of like their markets into the US, for instance, from the UK, because INgrooves, as a big American company, had, you know, deals in place with SiriusXM that other distributors may not have had. So with these, you know, digital avenues opening up, plus the transparency and, you know, some good expertise from a distribution partner, it was really, really great to see the revenue increase year on year for our partners. So some labels grew up to, you know, 30 to 35% on their first year of moving their catalog with us, which to me, you know, always had so much reward, because I think we're all in it to like make sure that creative output is actually valued and monetized in the right way. I think, there's always things that you can improve because the music industry is an ever evolving beast now. I mean, we're talking from, downloads to streaming to now blockchain, maybe nobody knows, right? So there's always going to be work in progress. I miss those days where you work very closely across the board with artists and labels, and you look at all of the platforms that were available. But yeah, I would say that working at Spotify was also a unique, huge project in itself, and there were many great activities, such as great master classes where we taught artists and labels how Spotify worked and how they could make the best out of the opportunities the platform gave. But also, some of apologies. Some of the, big diversity campaigns also were very, very rewarding. The last one I did actually before my departure was a campaign in Poland on International Women's Day, featuring 10 women artists all across Poland in 7 cities, and really pushing that cultural message. So I think when you have resources and you can make change, then that's also a really incredible experience, and another reason why working in music can be very, very awesome.
Yeah, that's amazing. And appreciate you sharing those stories too. Just like you said, I doing those campaigns in those countries that are kind of just coming online. I think from what you're saying, and from my view too, that's just got to be one of the most rewarding things, to be able to see something come to life that can have like a really great impact for the right reasons. Like, oh my gosh, this thing is coming. It's for the right reasons. The right people care about this. We have the right partnerships to help push this message. And anytime you can do something like that, that's a lot of fun, regardless of the scale. It's just great when you can do it at like the biggest scale.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very cool. Very cool. So yeah, we'd love to kind of, switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit more, kind of about, your roles, get into the nitty gritty, so to speak. Would love to start right at the top. You talked about it a little bit in some of like your day-to-day roles, but, from INgrooves to Spotify, what did your day-to-day look like as an artist and label partnerships executive? A lot of people hear that and they're like, wait a minute, I'm an artist. How do I get in touch with somebody like yourself? Do I need to? Am I missing out on something? So yeah, tell me a little bit more about your day-to-day.
Sure. I mean, the first thing that pops to mind is it was a lot of emails.
Yeah.
A lot of emails and a lot of metadata, for sure.
Yep.
No, so I mean, the core of somebody who works on behalf of a company looking after artist and label accounts is really the relations, right? So every day you are answering emails, picking up phone calls, having video conferences, meetings, in person back in the day also. Yeah. And you are maintaining the dynamics between, the corporation that you work for and also, the creative partners. So a lot of that from a day-to-day basis can be, how do I upload my track to your system? Or how do I pitch a track to a retailer, such as, let's say Amazon? Or how do I get my track onto a playlist? Most asked question in the history of the music industry, by the way, if I had a penny for every time. And other, questions such as, okay, how do I build strategy across this forthcoming EP? Do I release an initial single? Do I release 2 singles? Do I release everything at the same time? So again, there's a lot of rapport, trying to understand what are the client's needs, where are the audiences, and then putting together a strategy as a team, actually, in order to find the best opportunities for streaming or downloads or, even physical if you're working in those branches. So yeah, I mean, it's an ongoing conversation, I think, as a relations person, whereby you are always taking care of your partners, but also trying to find the best opportunities for them, for sure. Add that to all the operational logistics. So it's like, why is my tube not on Spotify? Why is my video not working on YouTube? Like, that's also probably, 60% of
Yeah, it's almost like it really is almost like just an extension of the artist team, right? Like, you're there on behalf of the platform to say, hey, this is how you should upload the music, or this is the time in which you should do it, or this is, what we've seen works best over a period of time with a single or an EP or an album, and all the different features that go along with it. So yeah, it sounds like a lot, and then some more on top of that too.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a very glamorous position, and it is, and it's really amazing and so exciting to work across the board in, so many different markets, across so many different genres, and incredibly talented people. But yeah, I would say that, very transparently, your job is also probably, 70% operations.
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, that's what, no matter what job you have, whether you're a creative, an executive, photographer, videographer, because technology plays such a large role, a lot of this stuff is operational, right? Like, even if you're an artist, it's like, you got to get the song mastered, you got to get the album artwork, you got to make sure it gets uploaded properly. Like, you need to do that yourself, and then work with those existing partners on those different platforms to make sure that, it's getting uploaded properly. And yeah, it's a lot of nitty-gritty stuff. But the reason I like to talk about that stuff is to just give that insight, because one of the downsides of technology being readily available is, that generation that came before us, our parents' generation, that are like, wait, can't you just put your song on YouTube and get famous? And it's like, no. Like, that's not how it works. Like, it's not that simple. There's so many steps in between. So I think it's important for anybody just starting out to understand that this is a job, right? And I think it's important to know that from the outset, so that whether or not this is something you really want to get into, and say, like, hey, this is really hard work. And so I appreciate you, kind of sharing some of those insights.
Thanks. I mean, obviously I don't want to be party pooper on these type of like,
right. Oh no, for sure.
So,
That's kind of my job as the manager, to just like, be the damn towel, to be like, guys, there's some work here too. Okay.
There's always expectations to manage. I think
exactly.
that's one of the biggest parts of, an artist and label kind of relations executive. But there's also lots of really cool stuff that you can achieve, such as, great marketing campaigns, or, just seeing an artist evolve throughout time, and with patience, of course, and perseverance, or also building that personal relationship where somebody is not just, a working acquaintance, but also turns into a really good friend, which is something that I've experienced over the years, especially in my former job at INgrooves, since I'm deeply invested in the dance and electronic community as a passionate, music lover, and just being able to create those relationships that started from, a trusting business enterprise to, a very rewarding long-term friendship. It's also, one of the most incredible things about, I think, these kind of lines of work, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. You've spent the majority of your career working across Europe, but you work for both your companies, very big presence in the States. So I know you talked about that a lot. I imagine different strategies on how to break artists, from Europe into the US. So curious to get your opinion on what you think some of the differences are between Europe and the US.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's funny because like when you, for example, working for INgrooves in the UK, your UK clientele will be like, hey, how do I get famous in the US? And when you're doing the same job for a US company in the US, they will all ask you the same thing. How do I get famous in Europe? So there's always kind of like this big divide. But what's interesting is that streaming has made music as global as it possibly can be these days, not just through, official streaming platforms like Apple Music or Spotify, or, you have like huge platforms like YouTube as well, which, is more video, but, is such a great source of music discovery. So the question is, I don't think how am I successful, in one market, whereas I think it's more about like, how can I just be successful as a whole? But for sure, starting with the audience that will probably recognize you best and understand you best, because one of the major differences in, European music market and the US is the language, right? So it's really important to know that, thanks to beautiful global history of post-colonialism, we're very used to exporting, English music into the world. So whether that's from the States or the UK, and oddly enough, but not surprisingly, the reverse doesn't actually happen. Somebody singing in Polish might not actually have the same recognition in the US or in the UK. That said, there are artists that don't really rely on vocals, such as Hania Rani, for instance, which is a Polish classical pianist, but also does very modern approaches to classical. She's been, very well recognized across the board in a classical community, which is global, right? So, and I think that also speaks true to other genres like dance and electronic, for instance, still very global, because, if you make it into techno in Berlin, then probably you'd be very recognized somewhere in the US, like Detroit. So, depending on the community that you're in, I think it's probably a lot more easy to leverage these conversations around how can I be more successful in Europe, for instance. But I think in general, when it comes to US or UK music, once you become relatively known in those markets, that tends to transgress in other markets too, because people still listen to a lot of English music, right? So yeah, I don't think there's like an easy answer or solution for this, other than, what we're trying to hone down as music industry professionals, which is you have to grow your audience organically and in a 360-degree manner across, the available online platforms. And that will really, really, help spread out your music, because the technology is already there, right? So it just needs a little bit of patience and some good guidance from, your teams. Does that answer the question? I feel like I went on it.
Yeah. No. I think it's great because, it kind of builds on, my next question. You partly answered that in the last one, but I want to reframe the question. So, what if there is an artist from the US or the UK, they speak English, they're starting to bubble in their area, but, they want to go into Germany and they make hip hop music. If they're dead set on that, what do you suggest that they do? I'm a big proponent of, really listening before you speak. So I think it's about like paying attention to what's going on in that market, doing your homework, and not just saying like, hey, let me spend a bunch of money and run ads to people in Germany or buy a billboard or something like that. It's not necessarily going to connect, because they're going to be like, wait, who are you? Why are you here? So curious your take on that. If an artist is like, hey, I want to be big in Germany, in the next 6 months, what do I need to do?
Yeah. I mean, I think 6 months, I'm not sure if that's enough time sometimes, but you never know.
I'm shooting the moon, right? They're already moving. They have a couple of things bubbling. They're just like, hey, in 6 months, I want to be, or just start to like make some real inroads into the community.
Yeah. I mean, I think depending on the markets that you're at, as I was saying before, you have so many solutions to check your data, on where music is being consumed on a global basis. So if you want to be big in Germany, then probably the first step for me would be, okay, what are your numbers there on Spotify for Artists, for instance, or what is your distributor giving you as a source of statement and revenue coming from this individual market? Because then you'll maybe get better intel as to, whether that's the right focus, or maybe France should be the better focus, if that makes sense. And then after that, I mean, there's no like magic trick. I think that either working and collaborating with artists on the ground to kind of put your name up a little bit, whether it's a featuring or a remix, and having that kind of like cross-Atlantic, collaboration is very, very important, so that you can channel the audiences from European artists. And in exchange, also, if you're already kind of a tier 2 artist and you're already kind of like in a good up and coming position, that will also benefit the local artists, right? Because European artists really want to be famous in the US as well. So,
Exactly.
I think that having that kind of network and community across, the similar artists, which kind of separates the borders, then that's a really, really great way to engage those different audiences as well and start building your profile. There are more traditional methods, of course, such as finding a label that will license your music if they really like it and they have an operation on the ground, such as PR, radio plugin. In Germany, there's still a fair amount of physical as well. So maybe they want to press some vinyl for you. Like, you never know, right? Like, it's all about like the interaction you'll have with different teams that really, really want to work on your music on the ground, and they have that set up. Then that's also probably a really great way to start exploring your German audiences in this case example. I think you can also do it yourself if you want to get in touch with, a PR person from Germany in this example, or, a radio plugger, depending on, what's being offered. I think it's also really important to speak with people who are very familiar with these local industries as music professionals, so they can say, well, at this stage, maybe some radio would be good, not maybe some PR, especially if you're working with smaller budgets. Actually, if you're like an independently released artist, that might actually come up. So you have to pick and choose, like, what are the best avenues for which you could expose your music in a more traditional manner. Then, yeah, I would highly recommend like trying to network with some music industry professionals that could give you a little bit of advice, so that you can, put your monetary funds in the right place and make sure that your music has the best chances of being discovered. When it comes to retail, of course, you can always ask your distributor. If it's a distributor that has various offices in, different markets, which more and more do now, then, they'll know how to pitch to retailers such as Apple Music or even Amazon Music, or, Spotify in this instance, although Spotify's everything goes through Spotify for Artists, which your distributor can do, or your team can do, or you can do yourself as an artist. So yeah, there really is like a plethora of opportunities to engage with a particular market. But I think the first solution is to really study, which market would that be, and can you get some better connections through your community first, and then see, through the professionals that organize your team. If you don't have a team, then I would say, just looking around for articles, maybe, how does the German music industry work, or like what, are the top sellers in Germany, or like what are the genres, so that if you are capable or not of having good opportunities to engage with local audiences.
Well said. Well, like that's it. I think you hit it. I think you hit it from every angle. And I appreciate you sharing that, because I think a lot of times artists don't necessarily think that they do have the tools. It takes a little bit of effort, and like the big thing is tapping into your community. Number one, like if you don't have a team, tap in your community, ask your German fans like what's popping, who are the popping artists, get some recommendations, and then go down the rabbit hole of like finding those artists to work with and really build relationships. Those things can't be forced, like no matter what. Even if you're at the highest level, the only thing that happens there is that you have more money to get to those meetings faster, or to get to the right people quicker, but you still have to go and meet those people, and you still have to build with them. And if that connection isn't there, it's not going to work anyways, right? Like you can spend all the money in the world pushing something down people's throats, but if it doesn't, if it's not for the right reasons and doesn't have that right nuanced messaging, it's not going to hit. And you only get that by, spending the time in the culture that you're trying to be a part of.
Absolutely. And you have to be smart about your strategy, right? Like, right. try and get 100 new users in Germany when you should probably be getting 100 new users in the US, right? If that's your core audience, because the more it grows there, then the more likely it is to, expand itself across the UK, maybe, or, even other markets where English is not the predominant language. So really, I think I can't hone this enough as a strategic point of advice for any artists or labels that, come up to me and ask for, some recommendations, because sometimes there is still so much work to do in your key market where you actually increase all of your monetization. And, I really do want this music to be propelled all over the world, but sometimes that key market is probably where it starts. And the more you evolve that, the easier those connections with networking with other artists or PR agencies or labels will actually happen, because they'll have more invested interest in looking into it.
Yeah, exactly. Well said. Another thing that you talked about within that, and you actually kind of started with this, was really just diving deep into the data, that's available to an artist so that you can see where you're popular. So, a lot of people know of the artists for Spotify pages, same thing with Apple. Aside from those tools, are there any other tools that you would recommend for artists to look into? Be it, checking just basic back-end analytics on Instagram and Twitter, coupled with, the streaming platforms. Is that enough? Or do you think that there are some additional ones out there that, free or, costs relatively cheap for artists to tap into?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty comprehensive list that you delivered already. I would say that, again, your distribution solution this day and age should provide all of the analytics across every platform, and that's the beauty of it. You can see what's happening on all streaming services in the US or, in Romania. You can see what's happening across, your YouTube channels. You can see what's happening across, your Beatport sales. There's just so much information that you can channel in one place. And I think it's really, really important if you are an artist that wants to really dig deep into these kind of data solutions to build your strategy, then probably you're at a level where you should with. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just, sorry. Just made me think of another question too. Do you know of a platform that has all of that in one place? Which I don't really know of anything out there that has where you can log in. Some people are starting to do it. You mentioned distributors, whether it's TuneCore or CD Baby or United Masters, but is there a platform that that has everything that you can just log into? It has your SoundCloud, your Spotify, your Apple Music, your YouTube, your Twitter, your Facebook, your Instagram. Is there one spot or just one that has a ton of them that you're okay, this makes sense? Because part of the problem as an independent artist is you don't have the team, and so you have to do it yourself. And so looking all over the place can be confusing at times. So do you know of anything that's simplified? And if not, maybe we should start a new business here. But
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I guess I'm not really sure how TuneCore's or DistroKid's backend work because I haven't used. So I don't know what
they have some of it. They have some of it. It's hey, you can monetize and connect your YouTube account, but it's not hey, here's all your YouTube. Now, I know I'm asking a question it's probably just not realistic, right? Because all these platforms want you to log into their platform and they want to hoard all the information. But you've worked kind of in this space for a really long time, and there's different back-end tools that pop up from time to time that are only used by big entities. So I wasn't sure if you were able to shine any light. I'm hey, here's this new thing that's starting out. Keep an eye on this.
No, I haven't heard of a platform like that, though I might have some investigation to do. Although to explore this question a little bit, I think it's important to give context. If you are an artist starting out, I think using a platform like TuneCore or DistroKid is, extremely valuable because you just pay one-off fee and then you get your stuff delivered and you can work your magic from the off start in a very independent manner. But then once you reach the point where you're actually really curious to see how your single is performing across the board or albums, and you might have a few releases in your bag, then, you probably want to start talking to a distributor that can help you operate with, a team, right? So finding these distributors can be tricky, but it could also be very rewarding. Like, the thing to understand is they operate in bulk capacity, right? So you really have to find an account manager that's really into your music and really wants to support you, even though you're small or, mid-level or already big, obviously, but then you probably be prioritized. But, having access to that expertise, but also having access to the technology, some of these bigger platforms give you, I'm off the top of my head, I'm thinking of, Believe Digital, The Orchard, INgrooves. I think that at that level of distribution, if they don't have those solutions in place to show clear and transparent data from all of the avenues that they distribute to, because it's basically, APIs, right, that are pulling information into the distribution company. So, if these bigger distributors, for the percentages that they take, don't offer that, then I would definitely find one that does.
Yeah.
It really is, like, with all this technology available and data available, it really is the bare minimum, in my opinion, in order to really look at how your audiences are operating across time, because even if we're not data experts, we can see patterns, we can see which retailer your music is performing well into. Oh, is that maybe a retailer that can be also replicated across France if they have a good, service there? So, there's a lot of stuff that can become very creative all of a sudden when you have this possibility to, study that data and just, get very curious about how you can use it as well. So for me, it goes without saying that trying to find a partner once you're at a level where you feel that it justifies, the 20 or 30% in distribution fees is very, very important.
Got it. Yeah, well said. It's like partner with somebody that's already done that sort of thing. Don't worry about that when you're starting out. Focus on the one or two platforms that you really want to build a community on. Stay focused on that. Then when the numbers become so big, bring on a partner who specializes, who has that for you. So got it.
Well, you have like Spotify for artists, but you also have the YouTube stats, SoundCloud also provides good statistics. So, between those three platforms plus your Instagram, you can probably get, a good overview of what's happening with your music. And then you can investigate further with, different distribution solutions.
Yeah. And not only that, I think you brought up a great point there, is just like looking at that information gives you great questions to ask. And then Google is your friend, right? Whatever your target demographic is, like, what do 20 to 30-year-olds in Germany like to do, right? Just off that basic thing. What are the trending things on German Twitter? Like, go down those rabbit holes and you'll see what people are doing. And then again, going back to what we were talking about a couple of minutes ago, engage with that community, become a part of that, give thanks, show love, and those things will start to reciprocate. Throughout the course of your career, you've worked at a really big distributor in INgrooves. Then you've also worked at Spotify, one of the biggest DSPs out there. You talked about it before. Everybody's trying to get on playlists. People are hitting you up. How do you do that? So my question for you is, how should artists be looking to build relationships with people at Spotify or Apple Music or SoundCloud? And what are some of the no-nos? Like, you should never do this sort of thing when reaching out to people.
I think following instructions is really key. Spotify built a great platform called Spotify for Artists, where there can be a very democratized process on how editors can discover music. And they spend hours and hours and hours every day going through every submission and trying to find the best opportunities for the music that is being pitched on these playlists that I have to remind everybody are tailored for users, so, there has to be a about what the users are organically listening to on the platform, and what is being pitched, of course. But I would say that, when I worked at Spotify, a lot of the advice was when you're filling out the Spotify for Artists formulaire, then, make sure you choose the genres right, give a little background as to whether the single is part of an EP or an album, what are the forthcoming release dates for your other projects, a very, small spiel on what the project is about, of course. But keep it short and sweet, like editors, even artist and legal partnership managers, like across the board in any company, often we're very under-resourced with our time and capacity. So the sweeter it is, the briefer it is, the better it is to ingest information. And I would say, don't bombard people, because there's a lot of regular follow-ups, and oftentimes everybody is aware of music, but oftentimes there aren't many opportunities that can be delivered. And ultimately, when it comes to playlists, that is generally decided by the user. It's not, there's no individual that has the capacity to say, oh, I think this is really cool, so I'm going to stick that on a playlist because it gratifies me. No, it really is a mirror of what is happening organically on, in this particular case, Spotify. I can't speak for Apple or, other editorial platforms for streaming. But yeah, I do think that, making the best use of the tool by being very concrete and making sure you get a little story right is very, very important, so that people can digest the information, they can listen to the music and be very methodical and passionate about it as well, because sometimes when you hear a great piece of music, that little piece of information can also really, really help support the creative output. So yeah, I would say that, in order to build relationships with DSPs, I guess can you clarify if that would be with editors or with artist and legal partnership managers or with all of the
yeah, I would say all of the above, because I think, artists tend to, number one, a lot of up and coming people don't even know that, know the right person to pitch, right? Like, they may be pitching you and you're just like, hey, I have nothing to do with the playlist. I can't necessarily help you. I can point you in the right direction of the people. So yeah, I guess kind of all of the above. Would love kind of breakdowns on both, your position and then curators, editors.
Yeah, like I said, I think, when you're finding, tools like Spotify for Artists or Apple for Artists, I believe, then, they've built these softwares so that your music has the best chance of accessing an editor, because otherwise it gets lost in, an ocean of pictures, smells, and, things are not, very transparent in that manner. So I would definitely say that is 100% your first port of call. When it comes to artist and label, partnerships or relations managers, in whichever platform, I think listening to your distributor, if you have a distributor that has those relationships with the DSPs, is really important, because they will be like your communication bridge between the platform and your label or your artist career. So yes, they probably have the right contact, they probably have the right communication structures in place to pitch your music, and obviously, like, that is their job. So again, like, another really important function of keeping your music as clear and having a really nice brief around it, so that your distribution team or other team members, maybe so you're part of a bigger management company and they already have contacts at Apple Music or Spotify, for instance, then getting that kind of information right is very, very important, so that it channels through in the right way and it's not overburdening with thousands and thousands of words. I think avoiding sending too many links and everything, especially when there's pitching methods in place, through, you know, existing relationships, such as in between the DSPs and the distributors that already have those channels open, is really, really important. You know, I think in some instances, there will be opportunities where artists do get, you know, direct contact with artist and label partnership managers, or, you know, any of the relevant teams across any platform. But generally speaking, that is, in my experience working from both at INgrooves and Spotify, that generally comes from the DSPs first, because they notice that something is happening and, you know, they want to open that line of communication because they might have a specific project in mind, or they see that that could be like a mutually beneficial relationship.
Yeah, again, well said. And I think it boils down to artists focusing on building their community. Because if you're making noise, same thing goes, I think, with like getting press, right? Go create a story yourself. Someone will cover that. Someone will come in and find you if you're doing the right things. And if the following is big enough, they can't ignore it, right? Because their job, if they're good at it, is to be part of whatever culture those playlists are about, that outlet covers. So it's just like, just get hot with the people. If you can get hot with the people, those doors will open up automatically.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, you know, once you focus on, okay, how can I find a core audience, as opposed to relying on, you know, some gatekeeper to give you something, then already like the energy is changing and how you approach, you know, delivering your music to existing fans. I think that, yes, there are occasions where DSPs might give you like a little launch into a better spot in your career, but ultimately, if they do and your audience doesn't pick it up organically, then it's also not going to work out. You know, it's
right.
very,
it's just going to fall flat. It's going to be like, yeah.
It's, you know, it's kind of chicken and egg scenario for sure. And I think, you know, the music industry as a whole has this very outdated attitude that, oh, I know somebody that can get me something, you know, or, oh, I'm going to knock on this door and going to be signed by this person, or this plugger is going to play my music on this, you know, specific radio channel. And those kind of relationships were, I mean, as far as I understand, of course, I'm not from that generation, but they were built on, you know, unique kind of relationships. However, right now, the music industry has changed so much that those relationships might still be important, but I don't think that they're 100% necessary, because there are platforms like Instagram, for instance, that can connect you to people who can make their own decisions as to what they want to listen to on their preferred platform, whether that's YouTube Music, Amazon, Spotify, Apple. You know, there's so many opportunities out there, and all of these services, they're really coexisting with each other because users have that choice. And so therefore, the person who has the choice should be the person that your focus is on when you're wanting to divulge your music, you know?
Yeah. Well said. I talk about that a lot. Like 30, 40 years ago, path was pretty straightforward. You get on MTV and you get in Rolling Stone, and it was like, hey, here you go. And there was a select number of people who had those relationships, and they safeguarded them. And, you know, it was a lot of good and a lot of bad with that. Now it's democratized, so anybody can pop up, and it really is about finding an audience, connecting with them, and super serving them. So yeah, well said. Two final questions before we get out of here. Again, thank you so much for the time. But yeah, curious to know now, you know, that you're not at Spotify anymore. What are you working on personally that you're super excited about? And yeah, where can people contact you?
Well, in all honesty, I'm enjoying a well-earned break this summer.
Yeah. I was gonna say you seem like you've just been going for like a long time.
Yeah. So, you know, after 13 years, I think it's also good for me to wind down a little bit and enjoy the remarkable pleasures of Berlin summer, especially as all are starting to open up again. So yeah, I'm looking forward to some dancing and some lakes.
Yeah, there you go.
But I mean, I have been working on a project called community consulting. So I've gathered some artists and team members of the music industry to come together in biweekly sessions where I help them for free with, how to schedule releases, what are your monetary plans. So, it's basically like ad hoc management and consultancy. Just to support them in these difficult times. I've also had some amazing guests, come on board and talk about their expertise, like publishing or, Twitch, things like that. So it's been very educational for everybody, actually, which has been great. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now. And in terms of where can people contact me, I'm available through LinkedIn, obviously, as Arielle Fischer, and also on Instagram, which is also my name. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for the time. I appreciate you sharing insight on, your career. Amazing story. I think you've been in so many different places, such a unique life experience, that just, I think, is suitable for an industry like ours, because like music is universal, and it really is about, finding the right people at the right time in the right situation. And who better to help guide that than somebody that's had, so many great experiences. So again, thank you so much for the time. Appreciate you coming through, and yeah, glad to hear that things are going well. You're taking some time off, much needed, as you mentioned. And yeah, we'll have to do this again sometime soon.
Yeah, thank you so much. Always open to any opportunity. So just get in touch and be very grateful to participate again, for sure.
Absolutely. Okay, great. We'll talk soon.
All right, take care.